Tea Time True Crime with Katie, and tonight's story is pretty unbelievable, honestly. It is the perfect story about, let's see, secrets don't stay hidden. This crime was a cold case and it was not solved until over 40 years later. Right now, if you are not watching and you're listening, thank you so much for listening or watching. Right now, I'm just trying to cleanse my body with some hot green tea and fresh honey with my favorite mug in the world, which is actually the oldest mug that I have. And if you are listening, this is from 2011 when I won the national competition of the Sundance Film Festival contest. I worked at Movie Stop back in those times, and it was like my favorite job ever. But it did not pay as I wanted it to, but we got to talk about movies and music and art and just help people with their creativity. And yeah, I sold the most Directors Club cards in this national competition where I won out of all the movie stops at that time. And it was one of the best times of my whole life. It was a 3-day trip to Park City Sundance Film Festival. I met celebrities. I got the celebrity treatment. I had 5-star food. I mean, it was just, I went skiing. Well, not exactly skiing. I saw people ski. I love snowmobiling. Snowmobiling is so much fun. If you have never done it, I highly recommend it. It is literally like go-karts on ice. Yeah, it's so much fun. But again, if you're watching or even listening, thank you so much. Please like and subscribe this video because every week I will give you a new podcast. Now, back to the video. True crime. This is pretty unreal because it gives me hope for those cases that have been cold cases for a long time because people have kept their mouth shut, per se. But this case of George Clarence Seitz, he was 81 years old and was missing December 10th, 1976. Now, a little bit about George. George was a World War I veteran, okay? And he fought in his youth, and he lived alone at 81 years old. But the neighbors and family said that he was very kind, a recluse, you may say. He really suffered from PTSD a lot. Also, he was a little bit of a clean freak. Every time he went outside or went over to his friends, his shirt or pants were just crisp and clean, and he always had a clean household. And I think that is amazing because I don't know about you, but sometimes just clutter just happens and you're like, oh my gosh. So feeling kind of bad right now because an 81-year-old making me look real bad, you know, as you can see my awesome, I should hang those up. Let me know in the comments if you're watching for me to hang it up. I kind of like, you know, Stephanie Germanata just staring at me, and then Melanie Martinez on the bottom if you can't see. And then also behind me is my neon heart, and my song bowl, because I'm just trying to have happy vibes and love vibes, because we always talk about something that is not so kind to the heart, but what I feel like is kind is that you guys are listening, because it's not just me, you know, sharing information, it's also you guys taking it in and hopefully educating other people, whether it is solved crimes, true, you know, cold cases, or, unresolved, you guys are amazing for even just listening to this podcast, and I really appreciate you. Let's go back to George, though. So George, like I said, he was 81 years old, a little bit of a clean freak, okay? Now, he had extreme PTSD from the war, World War One, okay? So good. And he had a hard time trusting people. He actually had a hard time trusting banks, actually. And they say back in the 1970s, a lot of people didn't trust banks, which is kind of insane now because, the reign of President Jimmy Carter, it was kind of like this bad, and people didn't trust banks, and we're kind of getting to that now in 2023. I hope not, but I'm just trying to be positive, and yeah, I don't ever want to be political on my podcast. I always want to be open-minded and non-biased, of course, because people can believe what they want as long as they're not hurting anyone. You're okay in my book, okay? Awesome. So, George having PTSD, he didn't trust banks, like, at all, okay? So, sadly and unfortunately, he would carry large sums of money around. I'm talking about in the thousands. You would just carry that around. Now, in December 10th, 1976, he actually went to go get a haircut. A mundane chore, because he liked to be clean and crisp and, spiffy. So he went to his barber shop, and it was his normal routine. It was a place that he trusted, and I feel that barber shops as kind of like hair salons, barbershops are for men, but we see in movies and everything like that how they're very open-minded and they have really deep talks, and I don't know about you, but if you go to like a massage or getting your hair done, nails done, it could be a pretty therapeutic experience. Talking to a stranger either about your problems, or you feel comfortable that you could talk to them, or vice versa. And George, was friendly and he trusted everyone. And he shouldn't have trusted one guy. But that's okay because over 40 years, we finally got his killer. And you're probably wondering, well, why did it take 40 years? Well, sadly, back in 1976, there wasn't much DNA, there wasn't much amazing technology as we do now. It took, actually, an older lady to call the precinct of Jamaica, New York, and to talk to this young detective and tell her story. Now, this detective, I believe his name is Contras. Oh man, if I'm butchering your name, I apologize. But he was 31 years old on this case, and he was a young detective, but very passionate in his work, and of course was, juggling a lot of cases like a lot of detectives do. So what happened was that, he got this call and he talked to this lady, and the hair on the back of his neck stood up because she knew so much about this case that he had to talk to her. He had to see her. And her story was pretty unbelievable. But because of her is the reason why we solved the case. Now, this woman is not identified because I believe she's afraid of the consequence, but she told the detective where to find the remains of George. Now, she was 11 years old and now in her 50s. That her her mother's boyfriend at the time, in the 1970s, she actually saw him dismember a body and bury it in the backyard. Wow. I just can't imagine, as an 11-year-old, see, someone you trust, like your mom's boyfriend, do that. But she was so scared that she didn't say anything for over 40 years. Wow. So you're probably like jumping for joy, like how I was looking into this case, like, yes, oh my gosh, George's family is gonna have peace. We're gonna find the body, we're gonna figure out it's him, it's all gonna be awesome. Sadly, no, not yet. But the police do listen to this lady, and they went to the house that George was apparently buried in the backyard, and after digging and cadaver dogs were on the scene, they did find a body. And of course, being over 40 years old, the body was completely decomposed, and there was only, I believe, like a pelvis and a torso. So pieces of his body were still missing. So, the young detective did not want to lose hope. So he tried to get DNA from the bones of the body that was found in the backyard. Can you imagine that neighbor, though, today? Like, this is like today time. Like, a detective comes to your home, like, excuse me, but we need to search your backyard. I'm sorry, why? Well, we believe there is a body that was, dismembered and in your backyard. I'm sorry, what? Yeah, can you imagine that? No. But, I digress, sorry about that. I get on little tangents, but I'm just having so much fun doing podcasting because there's no really time limits. And as the feedback from you wonderful peeps is that you prefer longer times, I'm guessing you're listening to me while you're just doing chores or driving or reading. Well, not reading. I don't know, maybe. Who knows? Multitasking, So they tried to, find the DNA on the bones, but of course they found DNA, but they couldn't exactly. It's wild how I read this case, but the DNA kind of came up as nothing. I believe because it was so just, it was long ago, but let me tell you something that is new in the true crime forensic, technology. So this is unbelievable. This is usually to find criminals now, but to find the victim's identity, they used genealogy. A genealogy, it's called forensic genealogy, to find the genetic profile. Now, what that simply is, to break it down, I feel like in layman terms, is that I feel like it's like an ancestry.com. You put the DNA in a database and you match family members with the same DNA profile. Unreal, right? So using that material, that DNA from the remains, they made a profile. And 2 years later, they were still not able to identify. They just did test and test. But again, this detective did not give up. But when they went through the complete forensic genealogy and the Othram, yeah, Othram, that's new. There's a lot to do with Othram, and it actually was just founded in 2018. But what they're mainly known for is genome sequencing of DNA. Also, an FF, a fun fact, is that the 500th episode of Law & Order SVU actually inspired the Othram technology. Now that's pretty cool. I really, really like that show. Ooh. So it's pretty amazing how they did the DNA, and a couple years went by, and this detective went through like 5 states of like George's family members to get answers and more DNA profiles to find out who the victim is. And that is pretty fascinating because they use genealogy now to find killers and people who, you know, we could never find in the CODIS system. So, example, I didn't understand this because I was like, how do you not find people? So, if one person killed someone or did something really, really bad, right? And they were never caught, they don't have to, or they don't do it again, you know, to like not get caught or what have you. That is why, you know, we don't get them at all, because when you're in CODIS, that is like the criminal database. So you may not even, I mean, you are a criminal if you kill someone, but I'm saying if you are not already in that database, sadly before, you could have gotten away with anything. Yeah, that is like terrifying. That's why all these cold cases are being solved with genetic like genealogy, because they're getting the killer's family members and sequencing the DNA and polygraph tests. And even though you can't do polygraph tests in court, which that is like a whole different ordeal thing, I just don't understand that. Well, because they say polygraph is not 100%, you guys. People can be really, really nervous and they may fail on accident. I mean, we don't know. You know, stress can play a huge role at doing any of those tests. I feel like you'll be stressed anyway arriving to a police and getting interrogated, you know? So, I get off topic. Sorry about that. So they found out years later that it is George. And the informant, the 50-year-old now who was the 11-year-old girl, said the boyfriend's name. And his name was Martin Mata. Martin Mata actually owned the barber shop I was talking about. And it had a weird name. I wrote it down, forgive me. It was like the Cutter's Barber Shop or something like that. I do apologize, but it was something like that. And Martin and his brother owned the barber shop, and it was around in the 1970s, in the 1980s, okay? And then it was closed down. But they found out that Martin Mata actually brutally stabbed George in the head for burglary reasons. He stole 7 to 8 grand of George's money and hid the secret for over 40 years. Martin Mata was shown with all the evidence, and he actually confessed. He pled guilty, and he was arraigned and charged for the murder of George Clarence Seitz, November 2021. Pretty incredible, you guys. It really kind of is not cool at all. Like, it sucks so bad that you have a World War I veteran, like, live, one of the bloodiest wars ever, and 81, just living his life, being a good dude, and then out of nowhere, someone you trusted go and stab you in the head and kill you and hide your body for like 40 years. Like, what? George's family is extremely grateful, and I really hope they have received some kind of peace, because George's remains have been found and his killer has been brought to justice. Pretty amazing story. I mean, it makes me think about the Robert Wone case. Sorry, that case will just always be with me. It's one of those cases that will just stay with me. And if anyone watched the Peacock documentary, Who Killed Robert Wone, let me know down in the comments. And let me know down in the comments what you guys think about this case. It's pretty unbelievable, I mean, there is so much I feel like a human can take consciously. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel we're gonna find out who killed Robert Wone, but not in a long time, I'm afraid. And I hope it doesn't take 40 years. But with George Seitz, the American World War I hero, he is found. And I really hope he is laid to rest. Thank you very much for watching and also listening. I appreciate you guys so, so much. Stay safe, and I will see you on the next one. And remember, you guys, no matter what is going on, remember, you're doing better than you think. Bye.